The Nevada desert shimmered under the midday sun, the air rippling with heat above the cracked ground of Fort Valor's firing range. The smell of dust, oil, and sweat hung heavy as recruits stood in formation, boots shifting in the sand. It was the first day of live-fire training, the moment that separated talk from execution. Staff Sergeant Cole Harris barked names from a clipboard, his voice carrying over the dry wind. Each recruit stepped forward, received an M17 sidearm, and moved down the line toward the benches. The metallic click of slides being racked and magazines loaded echoed through the still air. At the far end of the formation, Private Emma Collins waited quietly, her uniform streaked with dust, her face calm. 23. A little older than most, she carried herself with an easy discipline that didn't fit her rookie status. When Harris called her name, she stepped forward smartly and saluted. He handed her the standard-issue pistol without looking up. She hesitated for a second, then spoke clearly. "Sir, I'd like to request a rifle for this exercise." The line went still for half a beat before breaking into quiet laughter. Harris looked up, eyebrows raised. "This isn't a hunting trip. Private, you'll start with the M17 like everyone else." A few recruits snickered. Someone whispered that the farm girl must think she was auditioning for a war movie. But Emma didn't flinch. Her hands stayed steady at her sides, her posture perfect. With respect, "Sir, I'd like to request a rifle." Harris studied her for a moment, ready to shut her down. But something in her voice made him pause. No defiance, just conviction. The laughter behind her died down as the heat pressed heavier on the range. Harris finally sighed. "Fine. Let's see what you can do." He motioned toward the rack where the M4A1 carbines gleamed under the sun. The metallic clatter of the weapon in her hands silenced the last of the whispers. She performed a chamber check, confirmed the bolt forward. Safety on, and mag locked. Her movements smooth, practiced, and confident. Harris folded his arms, watching. Maybe, he thought. This one wasn't like the rest. The desert wind had slowed to a whisper when Emma Collins dropped to the firing line, the M4A1 carbine resting firm against her shoulder. The sun pressed down like weight, the range dust, carrying the smell of oil and brass. Around her, the air buzzed with quiet laughter. Low and certain, no one expected much. She moved through the motions exactly as she had been taught. Chamber check. Bolt forward. Safety engaged. Magazine locked. Forward assist tapped. Her movements were deliberate. Precise. Without hesitation, she settled into the prone, supported position. Elbows anchored. Cheek resting naturally on the stock. Staff Sergeant Cole Harris called out from behind the observation bench. 5 rounds. Target at 100 meters. Fire when ready. The words echoed off the range walls. Emma inhaled once, letting the sound fade. The rifle was warm already from the sun, the metal hot beneath her hands. She looked through the optic, sighting the black center of the target until it filled her focus completely. She exhaled halfway and squeezed. The first shot cracked through the still air. The rifle pushed against her shoulder with clean recoil. The smell of powder filled the air. Dust rose faintly downrange where the bullet struck. Harris lifted his binoculars, muttered something about luck, and lowered them again. Emma adjusted slightly. Breath steady. Trigger smooth. Second shot. Third. Fourth. Each one rhythmically spaced, as if guided by an invisible metronome. The fifth broke the silence with a sharper echo, and then nothing but the dry hum of the desert. The recruits stopped whispering. Harris leaned forward, glass pressed to his face. He didn't speak for a long moment. When he finally lowered the binoculars, his expression had changed. 5 rounds. 1 hole. He walked over slowly, scanning her rifle. Then her face. "Where did you learn that?" "Collins." She kept her eyes forward. My grandfather taught me. Sia. Her tone held no pride. Just simple truth. Harris nodded once, still watching the target downrange, as if needing to see it again to believe. By sunrise the next morning, the story had already spread through Fort Valor. In the mess hall, between trays of powdered eggs and burnt coffee, the whispers carried from one table to another. The farm girl put 5 through 1 hole. Some called it luck. Others said it was impossible. A few just stayed quiet, remembering the look on Staff Sergeant Harris's face when he'd checked the target. By mid-morning, the whole company had heard. Every conversation carried her name, half in admiration, half in disbelief. When training resumed, the heat was already climbing. The recruits lined up for rifle drills, their laughter sharper now. Hiding, unease. Emma stood in her usual place, silent, adjusting her sling and checking her safety. The hum of conversation quieted when a new voice cut through the air. Sergeant Luis Alvarez from Advanced Marksmanship had arrived to observe. He watched from behind the line, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Years of experience showed in how he studied movement rather than noise. He saw right away that Emma's stance wasn't regulation. It was better. Her weight shifted with purpose, her reloads fluid. During a speed reload, her magazine change was clean, her trigger discipline exact. She cleared malfunctions without hesitation. Muzzle awareness perfect every time. Alvarez stepped closer, calling her over after the drill. She stood at attention, sweat streaking her face, breathing steady. He asked where she learned to move like that. Her answer was simple. My grandfather taught me. Sire. On our farm, Alvarez watched her eyes for any hint of pride or deception, but found neither. He dismissed her, still frowning. By that afternoon, the rumor had changed shape again. It wasn't luck anymore. It was something else. Some whispered she'd trained before. Others said she belonged to something they didn't understand. The laughter was gone now, replaced by quiet curiosity, the kind that didn't fade easily. The office smelled faintly of paper and disinfectant, the kind of clean that never quite hid the desert dust. The air conditioner hummed against the heat, stirring a few loose pages on Captain Marcus Hale's desk. Private Emma Collins stood at attention in front of him, her uniform crisp, her face unreadable. Hala didn't speak right away. He studied her file instead, flipping through the thin pages as if something might appear between them. No prior service, no competitive marksmanship records, no formal firearms training outside basic qualification, nothing that explained what he'd seen on the range reports. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. So, Private, he said slowly, where'd you learn to shoot like that? Emma kept her gaze straight ahead. On my grandfather's farm. Sire. Hale's voice sharpened. With what? Exactly. M4S don't grow in Montana. She paused just long enough to show she was choosing her words carefully. Bolt-action rifles. Sire. Mostly hunting and target drills. Hale exhaled, half amused, half unconvinced. You're telling me you learned military-grade precision from plinking cans? Yes. Sire. Her tone never changed. He watched her closely, the way her eyes flicked briefly toward the door, mapping the room. The slight shift of her stance before she answered, distributing her weight for balance, not nervous, just aware. It wasn't something you picked up on a farm. It was something taught in environments where awareness meant survival. After a few more questions, Hale closed the file. Dismissed. Private. She saluted and left, her steps even. Controlled. The door shut softly behind her. Hale stared at the file for another moment before glancing toward his operations officer. You ever hear about those old reconnaissance teams back in Vietnam? The ones with the bird insignias? The officer shrugged. Hale tapped a finger against the folder. Maybe it's nothing, but maybe not. The air conditioner hummed on, steady and cold. The afternoon sun burned white over Fort Valor, baking the asphalt and shimmering off the steel helmets of the recruits standing in formation. Flags snapped in the hot wind while drill sergeants stalked the rows, barking last-minute corrections. Everyone knew the reason for the tension. Brigadier General Margaret Stone was arriving. The base hadn't seen her in months, and her reputation traveled faster than her convoy sharp, exacting, and impossible to impress. At 1400, a line of dark SUVs rolled through the gate, kicking up a trail of dust across the parade field. The chatter died instantly. General Stone stepped out, her uniform immaculate, silver oak leaves gleaming at her collar. Captain Marcus Hale met her at the entrance. Posture perfect, voice clipped and professional. She returned his salute with precision before walking the grounds beside him. Everywhere she passed, conversations stopped. When Hale mentioned a recruit who had outshot every standard record, Stone's brow lifted slightly. She asked to see the soldier perform. Within 30 minutes, the firing range was cleared and reset. Targets were placed at 100, 200, and 300 meters. Range safety officers checked every weapon, confirming chambers clear before loading. Private Emma Collins stepped forward, her M4A1 gleaming under the sun. The ACOG optic caught the light as she performed a methodical safety check. Chamber verified. Bolt forward. Safety on. Magazine locked. Forward assist tapped. Harris, now serving as range safety officer, gave the command, load and make ready. Fire when ready. Emma dropped prone, steady and silent. The first 5 rounds cracked through the air, each hitting the bullseye at 100 meters. She adjusted slightly, exhaled, and repeated at 200, then 300. Every grouping was tight, centered, perfect. The murmurs around her faded into stunned quiet. Through her binoculars, General Stone's expression stayed unreadable. When the ceasefire call sounded, Emma rose, cleared her weapon, and approached. Stone asked her name, her hometown, and her family background. When Emma said her grandfather's name, Samuel Collins, the general's eyes changed. Recognition flickered, brief but deep. As Emma lowered her rifle to salute, her sleeve shifted, revealing the faint outline of a tattoo, a bird with open wings and sharp talons. Stone froze for half a heartbeat. Her voice dropped to a whisper that carried more weight than any order. Black Talons. No one else heard, but the words hung in the heat like an echo from another lifetime. The hallway outside General Stone's office was dim and quiet, the kind of silence that carried weight. The clock read 2100 hours. The base settling into night. Private Emma Collins stood before a coated steel door marked with restricted clearance. The sentry outside checked her orders, then entered a passcode. The electronic lock clicking open with a low hum. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper, oil, and something older. The office was stark and functional metal desk, green shaded lamp, locked file cabinets, and a single framed photo of a jungle unit, long faded by time. General Stone sat behind the desk. Her expression, unreadable, at ease. Private, she said, though her tone held no warmth. Emma lowered her stance, hands behind her back. Stone studied her for a moment before speaking again. The tattoo on your arm, where did it come from? Emma hesitated, then answered, my grandfather had it. Ma'am, I got it after he passed. Stone nodded slowly, reached for a folder locked beneath the desk, and laid it on the surface. The label read classified, Black Talons. She unlatched the clips and drew out a black and white photograph. A young man in jungle fatigues stared out from the past, sleeves rolled up. A scoped XM21 rifle balanced in his hands. On his shoulder was the same bird with Talons insignia. Stone's voice softened. Sergeant Samuel Collins. Codename Eagle Eye. Your grandfather. She explained that the Black Talons had been an unofficial long-range reconnaissance and sniper group attached to MACV-SOG during the Vietnam War. They operated beyond map lines, trained to infiltrate, extract, and eliminate high-value targets, deep in hostile territory. Few survived the missions. Fewer were ever acknowledged. She spoke with a reverence that felt personal. He saved lives. She said quietly, he carried the discipline that built legends no one could talk about. A knock broke the silence. Colonel Thomas Reed entered Bice. Thomas Reed entered. His uniform crisp, despite the late hour. His face carried the calm of someone who had seen too much and learned when not to speak. He looked at Emma, then at the photo. He served with me, he said, voice low. Saved my life once. Then he told the story of 3-day exfiltration through the jungle. Wounded man on Samuel's back. An 847-yard shot that turned an ambush into survival. He reached into a folder and handed Stone a yellowed citation. Medal of Honor recommendation. Never released. Emma stood frozen. The truth sinking in. The man who had taught her patience and precision had carried a burden larger than she could imagine. Stone closed the folder. Her tone softer now. He passed down what mattered. Discipline. Focus. Purpose. That legacy didn't end with him. She slid a sealed envelope across the desk. Inside was an invitation marked Special Operations Sniper Candidate Program, Mountain Warfare Training Facility. Colorado. Stone looked up. Her gaze steady. The Black Talons were never supposed to exist. She said quietly, but maybe their story isn't finished yet. Emma left the room without a word. The envelope pressed against her chest, the echo of her grandfather's name, following her down the hallway. The desert night had fallen quiet over Fort Valor. Only the low hum of generators and the soft glow of perimeter lights broke the silence. The heat from the day still clung to the air, though the wind carried a trace of coolness now. Private Emma Collins walked alone past the motor pool, boots scuffing against the sand. In her hand she held the folded Medal of Honor citation General Stone had given her. The paper felt heavier than it should. As if the weight of its words pressed through her fingers, the chapel stood small and plain, a rectangle of stone and shadow tucked between 2 supply buildings. Inside, a few candles flickered near the altar. The air smelled faintly of wax and old wood. Emma sat in the back pew and unfolded the paper, reading the lines again. Gallantry beyond the call of duty. Conspicuous bravery. The phrases seemed too large for the man who had fixed fences and taught her to breathe before squeezing a trigger. She felt pride swell, tangled with disbelief. And beneath it, a quiet fear. The kind that came before stepping into something unknown. The door creaked softly behind her. Chaplain John Ellis entered. His steps slow, his presence calm. He didn't speak at first. He simply sat near her, hands folded, waiting. When he finally did speak, his voice was low. Sometimes courage feels like standing still when your heart wants to run. She nodded, eyes still on the citation. I'm afraid, she said quietly, of becoming what they want me to be. The chaplain's reply came after a long pause. Maybe your grandfather never meant to choose for you. Maybe he just trusted that you would know when it was time. The clock outside marked the passing of the hour. Emma folded the paper carefully and whispered, "Thank you." The words meant for someone long gone. When she stepped outside, the sky had begun to pale. The first light of dawn brushed across the horizon. She took out Colonel Reed's card, dialed the number, and waited. When his voice answered, she spoke steadily. "This is Private Collins. I'm ready." The C-130 Hercules roared to life before sunrise, its 4 turboprops vibrating through the tarmac as Private Emma Collins climbed the ramp. The air was cold enough to bite her skin, the kind of sharp that woke every nerve. She found a seat along the fuselage, tightened the straps on her gear, and stared through the narrow window. The plane lifted smoothly, climbing over the Rockies as the world below turned gold with dawn. Around here, other recruits sat silent. Faces set with the same mixture of fear and determination. Emma rested her hands on her rucksack. Steady and calm. She wasn't nervous. She was ready. The air at the mountain warfare training facility hit her like a wall when she stepped off the plane. Thin, dry, and freezing. The compound sat buried between snow-covered ridges, steel buildings, half hidden by fog. It didn't look like a school. It looked like a place built to erase weakness. The first week was a blur of structure and exhaustion. Reveille at 500 hours, physical conditioning at altitude, cold weather marksmanship drills with the Mach 13 Mod 7 sniper rifle. Chambered in, 300 Winchester Magnum. The rifle kicked harder than the M4A1. But Emma adjusted, reading the wind through the trembling of pine needles. Instructors drilled them on range estimation, wind drift, and the effect of elevation on bullet trajectory. Every variable mattered. Every mistake cost points and time. Next came urban sniper exercises, rooftop movements, observation posts, and long hours behind a loopholed Mark V HD optic. The targets changed, angles shifted, and instructors watched every breath. Night training followed stealth fire under AN, divided by PVS 14 night vision goggles, firing at faint infrared silhouettes that disappeared in seconds. The darkness didn't bother her. It felt familiar. They moved to jungle simulation after that, where humidity and shadows turned direction into guesswork. Emma led by instinct, navigating with compass and dead reckoning. Her map folded perfectly, her bearings exact. During stress tests, when others stumbled under zero visibility or fumbled during rapid reloads, she stayed calm. Tap, rack, reassess. Every motion measured. Master Sergeant Torres watched her quietly. She doesn't talk much, he said once to another instructor. She calculates. Weeks became months. The cold stopped feeling cold. The weight stopped feeling heavy. The training that broke others only sharpened her. Every rifle, every terrain, every breath brought her closer to something that had no name. When fatigue whispered, she heard another voice layered beneath it. Her grandfather's voice, steady breath, steady hand. The mountain air cut sharp against Emma Collins's face as she lay prone on the frozen ridge. 18 months of training had led to this moment. The final test, one shot at 1,000 yards. The wind rolled across the valley in unpredictable bursts, carrying snow dust that shimmered in the sunlight. Oxygen felt thin, every breath deliberate. Around here, the range was silent except for the faint rattle of gear and the soft hum of the spotting scope beside her. Sergeant Kane crouched close, his voice low and steady. 1.7 mils up. 0.4 right. Emma adjusted the elevation turret on her Schmidt and Bender FIV 25x56 optic. The clicks precise and mechanical. The Mach 13 Mod 7 rifle rested firm against her shoulder, chambered with a single 300 Winchester Magnum round. She exhaled, feeling the cold metal through her gloves. Her left hand steadied the stock, her right finger curved lightly on the trigger. Through the scope, the steel silhouette target wavered in the heat mirage, barely visible against the distant ridge. She read the wind through movement, a gust bending the alpine brush, a streak of drifting snow cutting diagonally across her line of sight. She made a final half-click adjustment, then stilled. Her heartbeat slowed until it matched the rhythm of her breathing. In, hold, out. The valley seemed to shrink until there was nothing but distance and focus. The trigger broke clean. The rifle cracked. A flat sound that carried through the mountain air. The echo rolled back seconds later, fading into silence. Then came it, a faint metallic clang. The target fell. No one moved. Instructors behind her froze. Master Sergeant Torres raised his binoculars. staring at the fallen target for a long moment. When he lowered them, his voice was quiet. "You just joined the lineage. Collins, the Black Talons live on Dotterhouse." Emma didn't smile. She only watched the far ridge, the rifle steady in her hands. The shot wasn't celebration. It was a conversation finished, a promise kept. The wind whispered through the valley, soft and endless, as if carrying her grandfather's voice with it. Steady breath, steady hand. The Montana sky was wide and clear, the kind of blue that seemed endless. Wheat fields rolled with the slow rhythm of the wind, each stalk swaying like a tide across the plains. Staff Sergeant Emma Collins stood near the old farmhouse, her uniform pressed sharp, boots dark against the pale earth. In her gloved hand, she held a small black pin, shaped like a bird with wings stretched wide and talons open. The insignia caught the sunlight for just a moment before she knelt and pressed it into the soil beside the simple stone marker. Samuel Collins, U.S. Army. The ground smelled of grass and rain, the same scent she remembered from her childhood when her grandfather would take her out to the fields. Rifle slung over his shoulder, voice calm as the sky. She looked at the name etched into the stone and felt the quiet weight of years settle around her. She spoke softly, her voice nearly lost to the breeze. "I finally understand," she said. "You weren't teaching me how to shoot. You were teaching me how to see, how to find purpose in every breath." The wind shifted, carrying the sound of rustling wheat and the faint scent of oil and metal, the kind that lingered after long days on the range. For a heartbeat, it felt like the air itself had answered her. She smiled faintly, not with sorrow, but with peace, rising slowly. Emma brushed the dust from her knees and brought her hand to her brow in a silent salute. The sun hung low, painting the fields gold, her shadow stretching long across the earth. She turned toward the horizon, eyes steady. Legacy, she thought, doesn't end with a name or a medal. It lives quietly in the hands that carry it forward, in the breath that steadies before the next shot, and in the calm that lingers long after the wind moves on.